Hi. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sarah, this is a 7 to 10 minute presentation. Why would you go out of your way to make an animatic of it? Is it because finals are looming and rather than study or socialize, you'd rather lock yourself in your room and draw and hope your life takes care of itself? My paper is about la convivencia, a phrase I've repeated in my head so often in the past few days that it's turned into mush and I had to look up what it means again. La convivencia is literally the coexistence, a period of Spanish history where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived in relative peace. Or so it's argued. But while listening to Hasta la Rise on repeat and finding resources for this paper, hoping and praying my thesis would solidify itself in the aftermath, I realized something. Peace is a very emotionally charged word. It inspires different images in everyone who thinks of it. And that's a problem, because it creates a dichotomy between groups at odds with one another. And that's kind of a big deal, especially when you're in the minority group. Dr. King said it best in his letter from Birmingham jail. The Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Terrible MLK impression aside, I feel like the same sentiment can be applied to La Convivencia, which is why I'm writing this essay. Simply because order existed between Jews, Muslims, and Christians doesn't mean that you'd call it peaceful coexistence. More like begrudging necessity. To put it in different terms, yeah, I dealt with my old roommate's annoying garbage. Doesn't mean I enjoyed it, and I did move out eventually, is all I'm saying. All that said, considering I'm an undergrad and haven't taken a history class since high school, sorry for being so uncultured, you guys, it's not like I'm the first person to come up with this idea. Scholars all over the place are not particularly fond of the concept of La Convivencia. Some, like Mark Cohen of Princeton University, straight up call Convivencia a myth. I mean, it's kinda hard to argue with him. There's this one source I have that examines, and I quote, how the Jews lived during Convivencia under Muslim and Christian rule. Now, I'm no linguist, but doesn't that strike you as being, I don't know, contradictory? How can a form of majority power exist at the same time as a form of coexistence? Doesn't coexistence beget equality? Am I asking you all these questions because I'm hoping you'll answer them and make writing my paper easier? I don't know. Maybe. Where was I? This kind of goes back to Martin Luther King's point too. Coming from the perspective of a minority, living under the rule of a group, however benevolent or passive in its lack of violence, does not make that feeling of negative peace and tension go away. Trust me, I know the feeling. It's cool. I'm cool. Back to that thing I was talking about. Right. Gonna theoretically be you again for a second. But Sammer, what does all this Convivencia stuff have to do with the Iberian Peninsula as a whole? Well, I'll tell you, disembodied strawman, that is just a poor cover for me directly answering the prompt from the final project rubric. How we assess La Convivencia from a scholarly standpoint affects our understanding of the Iberian Peninsula as a whole. Words have power, and words like peace, as I mentioned earlier, have a lot of power. Examining the history of the peninsula from a lens that assumes its inhabitants are peaceful with one another is also an assumption that could easily be debated. Certainty is important, especially when it comes to history. I think. I'm also not a history professor, so, I could be wrong about that last part. Honestly, if you can't tell, I'm pretty much winging this like everything else in my life. Alright, let's see. Significance of my topic, research questions, thesis, scholarly sources, barely subtle cry for help masked as a form of comedy. Yep, that's everything. Thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, you can ask the other, not quite as 2D version of me, who's probably in the back wondering about all the choices he's made in life, as usual.